Welcome to the FitnessFest Podcast. My name is Tyler Valencia, and I'm the president of KIPS and Time to Train Fitness. Today we have a great educator within the fitness industry, somebody that you've seen speaking across the country and all the conferences, and somebody that really gives items that you can apply within your fitness business. We have Fabio Comana. Fabio, thank you for coming on the FitnessFest Podcast and willing to just talk about your journey within the industry.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Yes. So let's kick it off with this first question. What's your story in the fitness industry? Can you give a little background on how you started working with NASM, and ultimately speaking across the globe?
Okay. Obviously a big question. So just to kind of give you kind of a high level summary, I come from a family where we were kind of pushed into competitive sports very early. I started competitive swimming when I was 5. And my dad was an athlete. He was a competitive soccer player, competitive cyclist. So I got into soccer, and it was kind of my push for my family. And all my siblings, we all were in competitive sports early. So I kind of developed that mindset, but also that passion for performance at a very early stage. And, I kind of maintained it. But what was interesting is I reflect back, and I remember a coach telling me when I was 13, when he wanted to make me captain of my soccer team. And he said, he pulled me aside. He says, I want you to be captain of the team. And he said, why? He says, because you seem to have kind of a very, sort of avid sort of, interest in becoming better, but also helping your teammates kind of become better in terms of not just better people, but better athletes. So I kind of realized that maybe I have a knack for this. And so, of course, my parents pushing me, they said, you should be a doctor. So my first, not really giving this much thought once I graduated from high school, was med school. So I started in med school, and I quickly realized I wasn't cut out for med school because I wanted to enjoy college. I wanted to play competitive sports. I played competitive sports in college, played rugby in college. And I just realized I just didn't have that discipline to juggle all these things, or to kind of, commit to the level of work that med school takes. And I mean, not to diminish any other program. Every program needs, dedication and commitment. But I think I just wasn't cut out for med school. So I started looking at what I was interested in. For some reason, I kind of stumbled on nutrition. And I went through the whole process of getting my undergrad in nutrition, thinking I wanted to be a dietitian. And my idea was really to be a sports dietitian, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then realized that there wasn't much of a market for that. So as I graduated, I was getting ready to do my internship, was kind of working in a hospital as a diet tech, and realized, I wasn't cut out for this either. So for lack of anything better, I went back to school. I said, maybe I need to go to grad school and buy myself more time to think things through. And that's really where I got my exposure into the area of physiology and, more of kind of the fitness side of stuff, because I was at San Diego State, and the nutrition department merged with what was the physical educational department to become exercise and nutritional sciences. So I got a lot of exposure, and I realized, wow, I'm finishing my graduate degree in nutrition, but I really like this thing called physiology. And I started to look at what I wanted to do. I had a professor there that said, get a personal training cert. So I did, started working at a chain of clubs here in San Diego, started off being a personal trainer, realized that personal training was great, but it wasn't a lifelong endeavor for me. I realized that the educational side of fitness and the research side of fitness was really something I was more inspired by. But I still wanted to get into the trenches, and kind of be involved in, training and teaching and things like that. So I started to realize, okay, maybe I need to kind of figure out how to make this work. So I kind of pursued my second master's degree at San Diego State in physiology. Same time, I started working for a chain of clubs in San Diego called Club One. So I started off as a personal trainer, quickly got elevated into the kind of, education side of stuff, where I was kind of more on the corporate side, dealing with wellness centers. But I was also doing education for the personal training at the commercial clubs. And I started loving it. Realized that, I kind of really wanted to focus more in the education and, kind of the fitness side of stuff. And that's where ACE, ACE being San Diego based, I started doing some work with ACE, kind of started off as a master instructor. Dr. Cedric Bryant brought me on board. He basically brought me on as the manager of certification, which I spent a few years, which was, great experiences. But he realized that my passion really lay with the education. So once the company grew enough, he shifted me over into education. That's where I kind of was the original creator of their IFT model. And I really got kind of to dig in under Cedric's oversight to, really build a lot of educational programs. And I got to go, and through ACE, I got to do some public speaking, kind of got my toes wet at conferences, first through ACE, and then, kind of doing stuff on my own when ACE wasn't interested in that. And that just kind of grew. And then eventually I just kind of kept, NASM reached out to me and they wanted me to come join their ranks. And so that was, after 7 years with ACE, I got this kind of call from NASM who wanted to talk to me offline. And they said, look, we know what you're doing at ACE. We'd love you to join the ranks of NASM because we want to grow. And it was a great shift, forever grateful for what ACE and Cedric gave me, but it gave me the opportunity to do something different. So with NASM, I've even had more opportunities to do that. But I always realized that I was passionate about it. So I kind of kept myself teaching part-time at the university until the university started asking me, hey, we'd love you to come on full-time. Come back to the university, my alma mater. And so at one point I was like, well, I'm full-time with NASM, part-time with the university. And then NASM presented me an opportunity to kind of flip those around. So, it was a map of about, a journey of about 15 years where I kind of got to carve out, a opportunity where I don't think I just have a career, I have a calling. And I'd like to think of what I'm doing as my calling because what I do aligns perfectly with my core values and everything that I aspire to be. At the end of the day, Tyler, I want to know that I've made a difference.
Yeah.
And if I'm helping one student in the classroom or one fitness professional at a conference, and I'm making a difference to make them better so they can improve their own life or someone else's life, then that's it. That's job done for me.
I love it.
And so I love the fact that I've now got to a point where I'm full-time at the university. But what I bring to the classroom that I hope my students appreciate is all my knowledge and experience in the fitness industry so I can be more of a practitioner than just what I call a academic theorist, which is what a lot of unfortunate professors have become. God bless them, they're doing their research and they got to do all this stuff, but they really lack that practical understanding of what the real world is like because they don't really play in that space. And so by me keeping my finger on the pulse of the fitness industry, by being at conferences, being in the gyms, working with fitness companies like Orange Theory and NASM, and even small clubs, and even studios, I keep my finger on the pulse. I bring that into the classroom that I think helps the students. But then I love what I do in the fitness industry because I bring all that research and academics from the university into the fitness industry. So I kind of really carved out, and I'm not the only person, Dr. Len Kravitz, a lot of people are able to do this too. But I think that was my calling. And it took me a while with a lot of mistakes and a lot of, hitting brick walls and realizing I had to kind of backtrack to circumvent, but I got there. And for the last, I would say 6 years where I've been full-time back at San Diego State and part-time with NASM, I've really found my calling and, it's been absolutely wonderful. And I'm thankful for every person and everything along the way.
Nice. One of the pieces I want to touch on that I feel like many fitness professionals stumble upon is they're like, okay, I want to get into the fitness industry because I want to work with athletes. And I know that I was there. I was one of those individuals, I believe, before I selected my emphasis at Long Beach State. I believe I was athletic training. And it's because I was just like you, played sports as a child, really enjoyed it, recreationally played throughout my life. And you think, okay, I want to do something with athletes, but then you start to realize either the opportunities aren't as abundant as you thought, or potentially there's something educational wise that comes up that switches you into a different area. And so it's something that I feel like many fitness pros will go through, even working at a facility. They'll see that the opportunities to work with athletes, there probably aren't many at the gym they're at, and you got to find those opportunities to build a career, and that might be working with general pop, the elder population, or even teaching group exercise. So really interesting, and great to hear. And I think along your journey, one of the things that I liked was you found what you love to do. You love giving back to that next generation.
Yeah.
And the piece that you mentioned about being in the trenches and knowing what is actually happening in the industry now and applying it into the classroom. I think that's a big component of that. And I'm not going to name any big organizational names, but I feel like we sometimes miss on those, the big organizational organizations miss on what's actually happening right now with the trainers, the day-to-day instructors, and what they're tuning into on social media and what's being pushed out there. And so you keeping your pulse on it, you can apply it right into the classroom, which gives me a question about what resources do you kind of feel are great for, okay, this is something that's trending right now. I should dive into that. I should learn more about it so I can investigate and then bring it back to the students. What are those resources for you?
You know, I try and canvas the fitness industry as much as I can. So I read publications. I'm always checking out blogs. I'm attending conferences. I think you have to immerse yourself in it. I'm fortunate that I have, relationships with a lot of, big players in there. Like I said, with NASM and Orange Theory, Core Health and Fitness, and then even small players, small, just mom and pop studios. And so I'm always trying to learn. I mean, the key thing is to read, to listen, and to understand.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I've always been someone that's always been forward thinking, and I'm always looking at where are we going. So for example, I'm looking at in this COVID era, what's fitness going to look like once we emerge out of this COVID pandemic. And I think it's going to be reshaped. I don't think fitness is going to be the way it was prior to COVID. So any trainer who thinks they're just going to go back to resuming their business as usual, I think is in for a little bit of a rude awakening. I think we need to learn to evolve, just like in every other industry. You have to evolve or you become irrelevant. I mean, we can talk about the Sony Walkman. We can talk about the Xerox copy machine, how they were masters of what they did, but they became irrelevant because people's needs and desires change, and the industry will change. We've seen, just look at 2019. Brick and mortar structures generated about $5 billion in retail, right? But we're talking about the online and digital fitness and direct to consumer. That was 59 billion, right? And of course, 2020 is even completely different. You just know what Peloton just acquired a major manufacturer. Yep. All right. So Peloton, which was an actual product built for the consumer, is now one of the owners after their IPO for 420 million. They acquired a large, fitness equipment company. Yep. Generally, it was always the way that the fitness manufacturers, the commercial fitness companies, acquired these little small at-home consumer brands. But now we just saw with Peloton, who after their IPO was worth billions and billions of dollars, for them to drop 420 million was a drop in the bucket for them. Yep. And we've just seen this thing reverse where they've gone to acquire a major manufacturer. Now they've got these channels of distribution and manufacturing, right? So I think Peloton was demonstrated a shift. Not just a shift in mindset, but a shift in operations in terms of how fitness will run. And we got Apple Fitness coming out. So I think what trainers need to do is to always keep an open mind, number one. And number two, they need to keep their finger on the pulse. And that means access any resource you can, but always be thinking about what's the next iteration, the next evolution. Training is becoming obsolete. Coaching is the next iteration. And I think, and I learned this many years ago because I looked at branding and I looked at the brand value of a personal trainer. And we see it because of what TV has done. TV, to my opinion, when I say TV shows, like The Biggest Loser on that, there's certain personalities on these types of shows that have really eroded the value of what a personal trainer truly is. And it's unfair, but that's how the consumer sees us. And it doesn't matter what we can say, it's the perception in their mind. At the end of the day, perception can trump reality, right? And so I realized years ago when I started seeing what these personalities were doing to the brand of personal training, I never called myself a personal trainer. I called myself a coach. And like you, I had a background in strength and conditioning. I was an assistant strength coach for a while under my mentor, Dave Oaten, who has unfortunately since passed. And so when a person came to me and said, I'm an athlete, then I was a strength and conditioning coach. When someone said, I just want to improve my quality of life and improve, reduce my need to take medications, I was a health coach. I was a lifestyle coach. I called myself a coach. And we don't have any governance of the word coach. And so it's important for trainers to not just think about, where my business will be next month. And I'm looking at my business in the next month or the next 3 months, or I'm projecting out 6 months. Realize that this industry is evolving just like every industry, and to keep your finger on the pulse and think about where you want to be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. Yeah. I realized very quickly I didn't want to be a personal trainer because I knew how selfless it was. I was giving up my mornings, my lunch, my evenings, and my weekends. And I knew that wasn't a way to go through life to find life balance. I knew that personal training wasn't going to be for me unless I owned my own facility where I could run it and have other people do it. But I also wasn't the type of person that wanted to be married to my business, because I tried that, having a business, and I was too much involved in micromanagement, and I just couldn't do it. It was affecting my quality of life. So I started to realize through those mistakes that I needed to do something else. So I always encourage my students, and I encourage my trainers that I talk to, don't just think about the clients you have for the next 3 to 6 months. Think about where you need to grow, where you need to commit yourself. Do a SWOT analysis, identify your weaknesses, identify the threats, and identify opportunities. And think about where you want to grow yourself. And the one way to do it is just to build a network, stay connected, read, research, learn, understand, and then find your creative solutions.
Yeah.
Find ultimately what aligns with your core values, because then you move from what I call a job to a career. And ultimately, if you can move from a career to a calling, which is what I believe I have, you will truly be satisfied and content with everything you do.
Agree. And something that I've been saying for quite a few months with adapting to what's happened this year is a lot of it just accelerated. It accelerated what was already in motion. We already saw the stuff that Peloton was doing prior to the shutdown. We saw many gym franchises going to or adding a piece of virtual training to their offerings to be competitive. So a lot of it was accelerated, and many of the instructors, and the ones that I'll say stereotype, the ones that said, oh, I don't need to do social media, it's not too big part of my business. These are the items that hopefully they tuned into now, that they learned the skill sets for being a small business or for marketing their business. Because and unfortunately, I'll say that this is a very honest response here on the podcast, is that I'm worried for the instructors out there these days, because they weren't good at social media marketing, advertising themselves before, which is why generally they worked for a gym. But that skill set is going to be very important for them moving forward. And so with all the pieces out there, and you and I will probably agree on this, and knowing both of our backgrounds in terms of education, but also with personal training certifications, your entry-level certification, that's just the beginning. That's just to get your foot in there and to get the ball moving. After that, then we've probably seen hundreds, if not thousands, of people that after 1 year, 3 months, 2 years, they're out of the industry because of the skill sets evolve. So all those skill sets are going to be changing too. And what's great to hear is how you evolved your title depending upon what was needed. Because sometimes I feel like instructors get caught up in, okay, well, I did my education this, I need to stay within that. But if an opportunity comes up, not many instructors will get other opportunities, whether it's working, if let's say your background is in strength and conditioning. Well, what if a client comes that is part of the active aging population? Are you not going to take it? You have the background. You just got to switch your mindset, do some more research, figure out best practices, and apply your knowledge. And so I feel like those are really solid tips for the people listening on this episode. And something that I quickly mentioned on was that you had a mentor, and which everybody, any podcast that I do, I always ask about the mentor thing, especially with being in the fitness industry. It's such a great tool to just get a little bit of fast track. What were some of those things that your mentor shared with you, taught you while you were going through the industry?
You know, I kind of look at mentoring in several ways. You know, for many, they believe that the mentor is someone who's going to show me how to be successful at what I currently do. But a mentor can also identify maybe unrecognized talents and skills that you have. And that's kind of, you know, what I had in my life. I had some mentors who taught me valuable skills. Like I mentioned, David Oden. He was a strength coach at San Diego State. He took me under his wing. He mentored me, helped me develop my knowledge of strength and conditioning and how to design programs. And he was really my first foray into the whole, you know, strength and conditioning before I got my CSCS and my USA weightlifting credentials and everything. And he was there, you know, kind of showing me how to do it and helping me evaluating, critiquing my techniques, my skills, everything. So he helped me get better at the practice of what I was doing. But I had other mentors when I was in grad school, unbeknownst to me, two individual professors, Dr. Mike Bono and Dr. Patricia Patterson, who were graduate, you know, teaching me in my grad courses. in two separate classes, having presentations and everything. I remember them both coming to me and having a conversation with me saying, you seem to have this knack for being able to speak publicly, and you seem to have a passion for wanting to share information with people to learn, but then share that with other people. Have you ever considered teaching? And it actually had never even dawned on me to be, I knew I loved education, but I'd never thought about teaching at the university level, because the old days it required a PhD. And unfortunately at San Diego State, we didn't have a PhD in exercise science. It required me to move either Arizona State or LA, which were Phoenix or LA. And I was actually contemplating doing that. I'd already been out to Arizona State. I'd already talked to a professor who was willing to take me under, to kind of oversee my doctorate dissertation and everything. And I was thinking about, performance, exercise science performance and everything. Unfortunately, that person that reached out to me had been diagnosed with lupus, was retiring, and that kind of became a roadblock for me. But, I always say life happens for you, right? Or life happens to you, right? And that really took me down a different path. And that's what ultimately led me down to my, working with ACE, and then from ACE, really getting embedded into the fitness industry. So when that door closed, another door opened. But they, as mentors, they actually didn't teach me anything. They just brought to my attention a skill set that I didn't even recognize I had. And I hope people that I've taught will look back at me and say, he's an effective teacher. I don't want to be the best teacher, but hopefully an effective teacher at the very least. But so I have two types of mentors, right? Mentors that have taught me skill sets and expanded my knowledge base, or mentors who have showed me something that I didn't even know was within me or that I had a potential to do. Yeah. And so that's what I try to do. So one of the things that we didn't have, one of the reasons why San Diego State wanted me to come back is because a lot of our students were going into the real world, and we didn't even have any mentorship at San Diego State. And so when the chair at the time I came back to San Diego State reached out to me, part of what he wanted me to do is not just come teach full time, but he wanted me to act in the capacity of a mentor. And so that's what I try and do with my students. I try and really mentor. So I run workshops. We have an undergrad student organization that I oversee. I'm the advisor, but we run tons of workshops on, opportunities within the fitness industry. And we do a whole bunch of different things. And I'm teaching them a lot of the skill sets that are not being taught in the classroom. So I'm, number one, trying to help them develop their skill sets. And a lot of them are the skill sets that are not being taught in the classroom that are going to be relevant in the workforce that perhaps we don't have as part of our curriculum. So I'm trying to teach as many of the students as I can. I'm paying forward there because I don't think without those mentors that I had with as two professors and David Oden that I would be where I am today. Obviously Dr. Cedric Bryant at ACE was a hell of a mentor for me, right? And he helped, he always believed in me, and he told me, for example, when I left, I was no longer at ACE, I went back to him and I said, hey, Cedric, I want to thank you for everything that, every opportunity you gave me. And he said, you don't need to thank me. That was you. I said, yeah, but you gave me the opportunity. You believed in me. And he says, that's what a good mentor does. And so, I'll forever be thankful to him too. But what I'm trying to do with mentors, trying to do both. I'm trying to help students recognize some of these skill sets that they may not realize that they have. And that's hard to do because we're a huge program. I mean, our undergraduate program, our department, for example, on campus is the largest of all departments on campus. So I don't get to interact with every student, but as many as I can, I'm trying to teach them, trying to mentor them in both capacities. And I think mentoring is absolutely critical. Now, the one thing I do hate, and I don't mean this as a slight to some of our fitness professionals, but some fitness professionals are willing to mentor, but at a price. And we have a lot of very successful fitness professionals out there that are doing mentoring. And while I applaud that, I also think sometimes it's a little bit of extortion, right? Because I think that they were probably mentored without a charge, but yet they're charging now to pay back or to give back. And I think that's unfair because for a lot of trainers, it's unfortunate that they're struggling to make ends meet and they want to get better. They want to be successful. They want to emulate that person, yet that person is demanding a high dollar for, the privilege of working with them. And I just don't think that's mentoring. Right? I think mentoring should be giving back. Yeah. And so I've never charged. I've been given tons of opportunities to say, why don't you create a mentorship where you can charge? I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't believe it. I know it's financially can be lucrative, but I just ethically have a problem with it. And I'm not questioning anyone's ethics. Everyone does what they want to do. I just don't consider that mentoring, right? Yeah. So I would love to see more and more fitness professionals who have achieved some measure of success, where there are people who are coming behind them who would like to learn from them to be able to give back. And I know time is valuable to us. We all have pressed. Trust me, I know firsthand what it's like to be spread thin, but we give where we can. And I think it's critical that every trainer that's out there today seek good mentorship from someone that they think that they might want to be, but develop that relationship, but also be appreciative of the time that that mentor gives them. And that's a very critical thing, that a mentor is giving you their time. And so it may not be much, but appreciate every little bit they have and make the most of that time that you have. So I'm a firm believer in mentoring and mentorship. And I think it should be basically just, it's basically something that should continue from each, I'm going to call it generation, but maybe from one level to the next or one generation to the next. We should continue to do it because then we as an industry become stronger. And that's how we best prepare candidates to be successful.
Yeah. And I just have to chime in with it that I see a similar, I'll say, pattern of something in my career with the first mentor I had was when I worked for an organization called Nesta, and my mentor there, he's the one that helped me develop my skills. If you met me outside of this podcast, so even though my background is in exercise science for the people that listen, my skill set goes beyond exercise science. I mean, as Fabio knows, I put on a online conference for FitnessFest, developed it, all that kind of good stuff. I can develop manuals, edit videos, shoot videos, a lot of skill sets that are not taught in an exercise science degree. But he was the one that gave me that opportunity, just as I said, the opportunity to develop skills that can benefit down the road. And so the next part of that, and hopefully this helps the people that are looking for a mentor. So I'm first a mentor that helps give you that opportunity, sees that it can be there. And then now my mentors, and I've shared this on this podcast before, is that the mentors that I have now, they're not even in the fitness industry. They help me with I'll call it the B2B items or the interpersonal relationships and how to communicate effectively, because when you get to a certain level of business, talking to someone it's just talking to somebody. So how can you say things, or how can you word things to effectively manage a business? And that's what my mentor does now. He pushes me to look outside and to look at things differently, because he knows that it's there. You just got to uncover it. And those are things that people, when they're looking for a mentor, hopefully they could potentially see somebody that they never thought could be a mentor. They could be a trainer at their gym that has the years of experience, and you're like, hey, I mean, you know the ins and outs of this. There's a reason why instructors working at a facility, I've been working there for 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years. They know something. And you just don't stick around for that long. And so I hope people that listen, they okay, maybe I will approach trainer XYZ and say, hey, can you take me under your wing? And because people are willing to share. And I really like the part that you touched on about the paying for mentorships, because that's having, in my opinion, having ethics, having morals, and willing to give back to the industry. And hopefully people listening in, they do find opportunities like that are free and that they will benefit from, because of what we're going to face moving forward in the industry in 2021. And that kind of brings me to my next question. So we briefly touched on some of the changes that we just even saw in the last couple months with the big players shifting and moving, and with virtual training. So what advice can you give to an entry-level trainer? And I know that there's two parts of this in terms of entry-level trainers coming out of college and entry-level trainers that are just getting a certification and entering. I consider those two different pathways, just because of the knowledge that an entry-level trainer coming out of college, what they'll have under their belt on the resume, it's probably going to give them more opportunities, in my opinion. What advice can you give a trainer, entry-level trainer, about the next 3, 6, 12 months in the fitness industry? It's a tough question. I know it is.
It is, but I think that's a very relevant question. And so I think this is something that has become more relevant now in light of where we've seen kind of the shift of fitness going. But I think it's always been a problem. Whether it's a graduate from a 4-year institution who's got this, bachelor's degree in exercise science or, something related, or it's just someone who's gone and attained a legitimate credential like an NASM, like an ACE or things of that nature. There's very little of that preparation that's devoted to building the strength of your brand valuation. All right. It's not marketing. Branding and marketing are very different things. When I've described this to my students, I talk about how marketing just creates a response. Like you see a toilet paper ad on TV and you're like, oh, I need to get toilet paper. Branding is emotional. It's very visceral that it to you, it's when you look at this particular brand, however you recognize them by their name, their tagline, their image, whatever it is, and there's a feeling of trust and a feeling of competency with that company. That's really a gut feeling. It's almost an emotional connection. And I think that's never really been taught very well. So in fact, one of my courses I teach at the university is a behavioral coaching class. And, it's great that I'm doing that because I'm teaching future physical therapists and athletic trainers and strength and conditioning coaches and dietitians and all these people, the soft skills. And it's probably one of the most important things that I learned I didn't have, because I came from the strength and conditioning world and I went straight into personal training and I realized, wow, it doesn't work the same way. Because when I told athletes to jump, their response was, how high, coach? Because that's what they were obligated to. They were committed to performance and they would, tolerate a lot of, pain and discomfort for that outcome of performance. But when you're dealing with someone that's in the public space that just says, I'm doing this volitionally, out of my own volition, and I say jump, they could tell me, no, you jump. I don't need to jump. So I had to quickly retool myself. And I realized my biggest weakness, I did my own SWOT analysis, and my biggest weakness was I didn't have great strength in, coaching. I was too hell-bent, which is what every personal trainer is, on being understood, and I wasn't understanding. And everyone knows that's from Stephen Covey, right? His 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, where he says, seek to understand before understood. And so that taught me, and it created a whole entire mind shift about learning about communication styles and communication skills and rapport building and personality indexing and understanding how to, overcome ambivalence and resistance. Because let's be honest, most people know they need to eat less and move more. And so you can't just tell them to do that because they know that. We have to peel back those layers to figure it out. So if there's things I would recommend, like what advice would I give? Number one, it's always been a problem that we need to become more coaches rather than trainers, which means we need to be more client-centric, using things like motivational interviewing rather than being very prescriptive, which has been our bread and butter since the beginning, the dawn of personal training. But I think now what's added onto that dimension is a new dimension of building brand valuation, because here's the reality. You may not believe this because you don't see them as being a threat, but you're competing with an online platform. That is one of your biggest competitors today.
Yep.
And, you might traditionally, I'm just going to make up a number, you might charge $80 a session. Right, I'm just using an example of a number. Yet someone could go online to many of these platforms that are doing either archived training sessions, all right, or they're doing live streaming. So, livestreamingfitness.com or, Daily Burn, something that's archived or something that's live streaming. And they're offering it for a fraction of a price. And yet it's this idea of cost elasticity, right? You might say, well, I'm better than them because I'm doing this live with a person one-on-one and I'm giving them my attention. That's you. That's your your self-focus, that you see that, but you're not understanding how the client sees what you do. They may see you no different as to what one of those online platforms is doing. So you can sit there until you're blue in your face and tell people how much better you are than these online platforms. But at the end of the day, the consumer or the customer doesn't care about what you do until they see value in what you do. I always say this to my students. I say, price is only a factor in the absence of value. If you want to be able to charge X amount of dollars, in other words, expand your cost elasticity, where you could say, I'll charge $100, and people say, I'll still take you. I'll charge $120, I'll still take you. That is because they see value in what you offer. So one of the biggest, I think, failures of the fitness industry in general, in terms of preparing our future or even current trainers, is we don't give them enough, of a foundation, understanding and applicable tools to build the value of the brand. Everyone thinks it's social media. No. All you got to do is just go look at how many posts are out there every day on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It said that the shelf life of a Facebook post is not even 6 hours anymore, which means when you put something on Facebook, all right, you're going to get 75% of everyone who's going to actually look at that within the first few hours, and the shelf life of that thing before it becomes irrelevant is about 6 hours. So think about it. And we also know that if you say, well, then I need to keep posting, well, then we create a desensitization effect. The most important thing to do is, I think, for people to understand when building a brand is the power of, I call it the power of 12. It's the word of mouth. One person can have a huge impact on telling other people about how good or bad you are. And there's a thing that most people are familiar with. It's called a Net Promoter Score. Frank Reichfeld writes a book called The Loyalty Effect. It's a great book that I think every trainer should read, just like I think they should read about Seth Godin's books on like Purple Cow, the tribes. These are all great books to help you understand how to build a brand, right? And at the end of the day, your brand can be your name, it can be your face, it can be your tagline, it can be anything. But the idea is this. You want people to be active promoters, just like Reichfeld tells us in his Net Promoter Score. 9s and 10s are people who are going to go out of their way to tell the world how wonderful you are. That's the power of 12, because one person can impact 12 people. And even if only 10% of them decide, you're still getting another 1.2 people who then in turn will tell 12 people. That's how you can build. You want to move from having to sell to creating a buying environment where you control your financial and scheduling destiny, because getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, having to give up your weekends, your evenings, and your lunchtime is no way to live a balanced life, especially if you're trying to have a family. Mm-hmm. You need to control your financial and scheduling destiny, which means just like a doctor. Tyler, when was the last time you called a doctor's office and said, yeah, I think I'd like to see the doctor for 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon?
Never.
Because they control that schedule, right?
Yep.
It's because they're booked up. Well, that's where we want to get to. We want to get to a point where you can say, you know what, I'm only going to work from 9 to 5, just like an average person, so I can have a normal life. Therefore, if you want to work with me, I have appointments. I take appointments at 9, 10:15, 11:30, whatever it is. And you know what, just like you do with the doctor's office, if you really want that appointment, you will find time in your schedule to get there. Mm-hmm. We have to get there. And the only way to do that is to build value in what you do. And you got to do that not through social media. Social media, unless you're going viral, it's great, but it could be a flash in the pan where you do something that goes viral, people join up, but then you don't continue to do that and they lose interest in you very quickly. Because we know how, I mean, they say that the average attention span of the human brain for something that we're not actively looking for is now 6 seconds, which is actually shorter than a goldfish, which is ridiculous. Right? And that's why Seth Godin talks about the purple cow effect. They're like finding your purple cow. What sets you apart? What creates that unique value proposition that gives you an unfair advantage against your competition? And your competition is the internet. Yeah. So we have to find ways to build value. And the best way to do it is to build a tribe through word of mouth. Find those active promoters and let them tell the world how wonderful you are. And find those detractors who are hating what you do and make sure you were apologizing to them and asking for a do-over, because they will destroy your business. And if you've got more than 5% of people who you're surveying, and this is something you should be doing, trainers should all be doing that, is listening to their customers and asking them the fundamental question. It's called the one question that we all want to know. How likely are you to refer other people to me? That's the one question everyone wants to know. That is the true loyalty effect. Right? And if you've got 9s and 10s, those are people you love and you want to keep them engaged in what you do. That's where you use social media to keep talking to them. So give them relevant information, stuff. Talk about the holidays right now. Talk about whatever it is. Talk about how to lose that COVID-19, all right, that we've put on during these 9 months, right? Whatever it is, have relevant content that they can digest and they can apply. But the key thing is build your tribe by power of mouth, right? Whether you're doing online training or one-on-one training, don't be afraid to ask people whether they'd refer other people to you, right? And you don't need to do it, say, well, if you do, I'll give you like a $5 gift card, because some of our customers have more money than God. What would they do with a $5 gift card? Yeah. It's irrelevant to them. Find something that would be meaningful to them. So maybe you say, I have this new program and I value your loyalty and I'd like you to be the first to try it out because I value the feedback you'll give me. That makes them feel special. That's an intangible that makes them feel more connected to you. We have to find ways, and I think this is probably the number one thing I'm going to say, is people think, I'm just going to go to a gym and clients are just going to fall at my feet. No. You have to create value so that they see that the price you're going to charge is going to work. And with the growth of online training and the fact that the clubs that are surviving are going to be those high volume, low cost, like the Planet Fitnesses who are charging, under $25 a month. How do you justify $60 personal training session when I'm spending $25 for a membership? It's like, I'm going to buy a $15,000 car, but but you're going to upsell me $10,000 on leather heated and ventilated seats. It doesn't happen in a $15,000 car.
Mm-hmm.
That's why personal training doesn't prove to be successful in these high volume, low price clubs. Personal training works in like the lifetime type clubs because that's the type of clientele they're attracting.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're going to see more and more of this online training where the price has been gutted, you have to find ways to demonstrate value. It's going to be harder today than ever. When I say harder today, harder as we are now and as we're going to be emerging out of this pandemic. So if there's something I'd say is understand branding and how to build your brand. There's tons of great resources out there. Malcolm Gladwell talks about, some of these soft, tangible things. I talked about Chip Conley writes a great book called Peak. He's a very successful boutique hotelier. I talked very briefly about Seth Godin and Frank Reichfeld with the loyalty effect. We need to understand these things. These are things that we want to learn because at the end of the day, if you can demonstrate value, people will buy, and then you get to control your scheduling and financial destiny. Yeah. And that's something that we haven't done very well. And so it has to be self-learned. I had to self-learn it all myself. I worked with an entrepreneur instructor. So we have Bonnie Schroeder here at San Diego State. He helped me a lot, but I've also had to do this on my own by self-learning, self-reading. And you can do it. Find a mentor who will help you if they know how to do it too. Yep. But build your brand, and then once you build your tribe through the power of word or the power of 12, the word of mouth, you use social media to talk to your tribe. Because every tribe needs a tribe leader. Seth Godin tells us that, right? So that would be the one thing. If you're saying, what's the one thing I'd want to do? He said, first of all, learn the soft skills, learn to be a coach, not a trainer, but more importantly, learn how to build the value of your brand. Because without those, you will not succeed. You will just survive, and you're going to struggle to survive your entire life.
Yeah, really good stuff right there. Really good stuff. And something that kicking off 2021 when this episode's in the air is going to be very practical for anybody listening to this podcast. And I just want to throw out one tidbit before we sign off here. A couple weeks ago on my other podcast with Kips, the company that I own, I had somebody that does online coaching at a high level. He talked about the way that he is creating value within his services. I mean, people will see this with the big name brands out there with the multi-cam angles, all that kind of good stuff. He has developed that in his own home office. He has different camera angles, different microphones set up. And so what he shared was when he does his coaching and he's telling somebody, okay, here's a new client, here's how much I charge. Okay, yeah, I see the value immediately because he's not just setting his phone, trying to maneuver it against a chair or against his desk so that hopefully he doesn't fall over when he's doing his online coaching. He's created his value in a virtual space. So that's a great episode to listen to. I just want to throw it in there if somebody wants to hear about somebody that's doing it right now, just a very small business guy doing it at a high level. But that's just one part of it. There's so many pieces that we just shared right there that you can unpack and digest and start to implement, start taking action on these items. So before we sign off, where can listeners find you? Where can they get in contact if they have a question, anything like that?
It's funny. I am kind of, I used to have quite a presence on Facebook. I would post educational articles and everything, just with everything I've got going with this COVID, I'm fortunate, I'm blessed. As much as I want this COVID pandemic to be over, it's given me more work than I've ever had before. So I've become scarce on social media. I have posts, so by all means, you can find me under my name on Facebook. Please, I've posted a ton of articles, have access to them. And I encourage you, you have my permission. Download them, share them, use that information. If it helps you get better, great, then my job is done, right? But, I don't post I haven't posted in a while just because I haven't had the time, the bandwidth. I had an assistant a while ago, but I just didn't feel like it was my true message was getting out there. So I've kind of managed it by myself, but now I've spread myself too thin. So people can always reach me via my email, which you can reach me through Facebook. You can reach me through directly via my email. It's just my last name, period, first name @gmail.com. I'm still doing that kind of old traditional way. And like you said, people have to be able to use social media, effectively. I'm the first to agree with that. I just don't have the bandwidth right now to do it. But I've been fortunate that I've built my brand value that it's got me to a point, as I said, that I'm busier now than I've ever been before because I've taken the time over the years to build my brand value. And I hope that everyone can do the same thing, get to a point where, we're busier than we care to be, because that's a good problem to have.
Agreed.
The hardest decisions to say no. And that's, something I've had to learn. But, so because you want to manage your time and your life. But, if they want to reach me, San Diego State's always a way to reach me through the university. Through NASM, you can reach me. And then, you can reach me through Facebook. I don't check it as often as I should, but I will get to it at some point, I promise. All right.
Great stuff. Great stuff. I can't say enough how much I enjoyed this episode and all the tidbits in there and stuff that Fit Pros can immediately apply, go research, all that kind of stuff. Thank you again for coming on and being my guest.
You're welcome, Tyler. Always a pleasure. And as I said, I just wish everyone the best, best for the holidays, the Happy New Year. And of course, let's hope for everyone it's a prosperous, safe, and healthy 2021.